Welcome to the Wizard of Cause, your go-to podcast for social impact, where we speak to innovative businesses, how they give, and of course, the charities that they love and inspire them. Now, whether you're an entrepreneur, a startup founder, or a business professional looking to stay ahead of the curve, the Wizard will show you how to build lasting social impact on the world. Are you ready to grow, give, and be inspired? Let's get started.
Hey, are you looking to scale your business from five figures to six figures or six figures to seven figures? If you are, I have the perfect thing for you. What I want you to do today is I want you to go download a book. This book is going to take you through my 3-pillar system. It's 100% free. All you have to do is go to growfast.cash. I say again, go to growfast.cash and you're going to be able to download my free international best-selling book, which is called Be Good, Be Brief, Be Gone. You can take that book. It's going to help you scale your business to the next level. Again, go download it. Be good, be brief, be gone. Growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash. Enjoy.
Bob, I appreciate you jumping on with me today here. For those watching this in July or August or whenever you're watching across the year, this is December 26th. So we've just come off of a lot of family and holidays, and yet we've jumped right back into it. I appreciate you coming on and talking to us. You work with veterans, at the Veterans Service Center. But real quickly, just like we always do, Bob, real quick, tell me who you are, what you are, and what do you do?
All right. Well, glad to be here. I'm Bob McLaughlin. I'm the executive director of the Carmel Veterans Service Center, 501c3 here in Colorado Springs. I came to Fort Carson in 2009 to serve as the garrison commander. I'm retired Army, served for 29 years. And the good news for me is I was able to transition from active duty to living my passion a second time in service and being able to start a 501c3 to help military veterans and their families integrate into the community. We've got strong connections throughout the state of Colorado and nationally. So proud to do the work, have a great staff here, and it's very important.
What are so y'all have bases right around there? I'm from Savannah, Georgia, so we are right on the coast. I am dripping in bases all around us, right? But y'all have bases right up around there?
There are 5 military installations in the area. The farthest away is Buckley near Denver, but right here in Colorado Springs, we have Peterson, Schriever, Fort Carson, the Air Force Academy. There's 400,000 veterans in Colorado. Almost 100,000 are in El Paso County. Colorado Springs takes up a lot of El Paso County. And there's about 45,000 active duty in the area. Congressman Lamborn's district is the largest veteran populated district in America, and we are smack dab in the middle of that district.
Oh, wow. That's a particular metric, right, to be able to have.
Absolutely.
How do you end up having one where you have the absolute, most veteran, densely rich, area?
Well, when you look at service, I'm a soldier, so Fort Carson is one of the most highly sought after installations in the Army because of the, Colorado Springs and Colorado and the outdoors, and it took me 24 years to get here. I'm a native New Englander, so I'm used to a little bit of the cold. The weather here is very temperate. There's stuff to do outside all the time. So service members love to come here. Space is here. The Air Force is here. We even have a scattering of Navy and Marines in the area, even though there's no oceans near here. So it's a joint community of service members and veterans.
So you all your family all hail from back east, but you come all the way here then to Colorado Springs? Do you ever go back to that side and see them?
Yeah, actually, my wife is also from Massachusetts. So both our families are from that area and they come out to visit. So, when you look at our mission, military veterans and their families, family is so important. Throughout my career, I've learned so much. I have 5 children, and the importance of a strong family in a service member's life is critical.
No kidding. So tell me then, one, I applaud it. I did not serve. The worst I ever had to do was I went to military school, and that's not we can't do anything with you, so we're shipping you off to military school, right? That's we have here in Savannah, Georgia, we have a military day school, which is highly respected. And I wanted to go to it. I really appreciated it. Um, both my grandfathers, World War II veterans. Uncle was in Korea and Vietnam. Um, he had so much shrapnel in his body, and this is in late 70s, start of the early 80s. He going to the airport, he had to pull out his medical card and ahead of time and walk with it, right? Like it's got a virus on it, because he was going to set off the
Right.
medical detector, and he did, and he'd had people freak out, on him. Uh, and so I mean, he just had that much metal in his body. But um, golly, I didn't know that was and you're like it's like veterans destination center. They love the area. It's sought out. But tell me then, I can see then the need for it. But so how did Mount Carmel's specifically Veteran Super Center, excuse me, Veteran Service Center get started? You told me the original founder, Jay Chimina, right? Um, how did when did that start? What was his underlying vision when he started it out?
Well, I had the good fortune of meeting Mr. Chimino when I was serving on Fort Carson, but really, my journey as a soldier that took me to where I am today started probably after my third deployment in Iraq as a task force commander,
Oh wow.
um, in realizing the importance to help our service members, wounded, ill, and injured, invisible wounds and physical wounds, um, being able to keep them strong and their families. Sustained combat operations and multiple deployments certainly has an effect on our service members, whether it's a physical wound or an invisible wound. And for me, we in the 2007, 2008 time period really never heard the term post-traumatic stress or traumatic brain injury, and that term started really coming to light when people started feeling the effects of combat, um, and that's the invisible wounds. So I observed the impact on what that meant to service members' families and how it could destroy families, and how basically all the at-risk behaviors that we have in society, and especially in the military, whether it's suicide ideations, domestic violence, um, drugs, alcohol, when you take service members into our military that may have a pre-existing condition and then put them into combat, and on the other end, you're not going to get the best behavior. It's incumbent upon us um, as a military to make sure we're taking care of them. So for me, when I served on Fort Carson as the garrison commander from '09 to '12, I had the opportunity to put together programs and services to help um, Gold Star families, the families who've lost a loved one, to help wounded warriors, to try to lessen the stigma of asking for help. So all of those things for me really, really helped implement some programs here at Fort Carson that are still in existence that help with resiliency and wellness. We built one of the Army's best resiliency centers, wellness centers. Um, for wounded warriors, we helped develop a strong program for the Wounded Warrior Battalion way back when. We have a Gold Star Family Center called the Fallen Heroes Family Center. And when we were doing all of that, Mr. Chimino, who has a very successful car dealership. Mr. Chimino, by the way, passed away earlier this year. I had the opportunity to
I'm
know
sorry.
him for 15 years and then work with him for 10 years. So as he was operating in the community, Jay and I did things to bring the community and the troops closer together. Fort Carson has a remote training area called Pinion Canyon near the town of Trinidad, which happens to be his hometown. So Mr. Chimino helped me bring the community and the troops closer together when they were doing remote training there. Jay built a health and wellness center in Trinidad from his childhood church, Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and opened the doors in 2011, and it focused on health and wellness for that rural community. And then he had the idea to do something in Colorado Springs to help veterans. I'm on active duty. I'm serving. It's a full-time job, obviously. And he started asking me, Colonel, what are you going to do when you grow up? And I'm like, why does this car dealer? Why is he asking me what I want to do when I grow up? And I clearly told him, I really don't want to get in the car business.
I'm sorry. That's
And
kind
that
of
was
insulting to look at a guy and I get, what are you going to do when you grow up?
so he had this idea. If Mr. Chimino was a tremendous leader and an exceptional person, and he was already thinking of doing something, and I didn't know this, but he was thinking of me helping him with this. I had orders to Afghanistan for my final deployment in 12 and 13, and I really didn't pay attention to him. I said, I'm going to go back to New England and get a job with Robert Kraft and Tom Brady. And he laughed at me. And then when I came back from my deployment, I had another assignment in Texas, and I met with him over my Christmas leave. And at the time I had about 28 years of active duty, 5 deployments at the time, and I understand personally the impact that that has on a family. My family is no exception.
Hmm.
So I was doing an assessment of my personal situation and what I should do, retire, stay in, and then he called me. Mr. Chimino called me like 2 days before Christmas in 2013 and said, we're going to have lunch and I'm going to make you stay in Colorado Springs. And again, I thought he was crazy. And we met for lunch at his favorite place, the Edelweiss German restaurant. My
Oh,
favorite dish there is cashew chicken. And, he basically said, I need your commitment to do this. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, remember, we talked about helping veterans. And of course, I didn't pay attention. And he said, look, I really want to do something in Colorado Springs with the Mount Carmel brand and help veterans. And I want you to help me with it. And he goes, just ask your wife, see what she says. And I did. And my wife said, look, just, give it a shot. Why not? So I retired in 2014, came back to Colorado Springs, and I gave him some conditions. I said, if we're going to do something meaningful to help military veterans and their families, we have to have a place. The building that I'm in right now is our center. It's about 18,000 square feet. We have a campus here with some other buildings as well. And to me, for our military members, they want to deal with people. They don't want to, go on the web. They want to deal with people who can help them. So having a physical structure, brick and mortar, was usually important. And then once I started work in August of 14, it's been about 10 years for me. We started refurbishing the building and we opened the doors. We had a soft opening in March of 16 and a full blown opening in July of 16. So it's been a little over 8 years operating here in Colorado Springs, which is an ideal place to be doing the kind of work to help with transition out of the military.
well, it sounds like it. So I'm going to take one side step and I'm going to say, I personally think German food is the unsung comfort food of the world, and more people need to know it.
And the beer.
Right? Well, I said German food, right?
Yeah,
You're just being redundant now, but I mean,
yeah, yeah.
seriously, um, uh, you know, schnitzel, spatzel. My best friend in military school, um, big old boy. We all called him Bear because he was about that size. His mother's name was Elfrida. She was pure German. His daddy met her there, brought her over, and spoiled me food wise. Delicious stuff. So one, I mean, that's got to be kind of a huge compliment for this guy to sit there and ultimately be sitting there saying, "This is a vision I've got. This is what I want to do, Bob. I need your help to do it." Right. Um, but so you start this out and you're doing this. Everything changes over time, right? And especially the military. Military's always got its foot on both sides of the river. One, you get your nomenclature, you get everything down. This is the way it is. This is where we do it. We do it this way every time. But second, you're also planning and what can we do? What can we do to make this better? How can we add? So since the veterans inception, what have you done then or what needs have you seen that you've had to flex to and evolve and change and say, this is, and this is where we started out and we always have a vision of what we want to do, but we had to grow, right? We had to evolve, we had to change to meet the needs. What is something you've had to implement that you may or may not have thought you were going to need at all or need as much, when you started out?
Well, it's a pretty interesting tale, and I'll tell you the tale. So
You have the floor. Go.
when we started this business, Jay gave me a lot of leeway, and really, it's about keeping families strong. Our Department of Defense, when the war started and Secretary Rumsfeld was in office, he did a lot to make sure that there were services and programs to help military families so that the service members could fight. And that's the whole, purpose of our military, to make sure we can fight and win, and make sure that the families are cared for.
Right.
Once you transition out of the military, not so much. Your average American thinks the VA does everything for veterans, and they're not chartered to do that. Three things: burials, benefits, and health care. And not all veterans qualify for all the health care. Every military member gets a full screening from head to toe to decide what service-related challenges they have, screened by the Department of Defense and then screened by the VA, and then they'll get care from the VA for whatever the results of what they call service-related disability is. So for me, when I looked at, okay, what do we need to do to augment transition in the needs? And when I cued the community, because a very military-friendly community here, they said, okay, if you are serious about doing this, because I knew most of the community leaders while I was serving on active duty, they said the key things are education, counseling, and assistance, legal counseling and assistance, financial counseling and assistance, links to benefits, and housing support. And of course, now with the economy, housing support is critical. So the way I built Mount Carmel was to start with what we now call Military Veteran Family Services, where we do education, counseling, and assistance. Way back when, 15 years ago, many colleges and universities would use the post 9/11 GI Bill to get service members into the school because, they paid the tuition, but there were not so many good programs to help them. It's changed quite a bit. In this area, most of the colleges and universities have veteran centers to make sure during transition veterans can get the help and stay in school. Legal assistance for civil matters are very important. We try to do some pro bono legal work to help. We have a very strong partnership with the Veteran Service Officers of El Paso County. As a matter of fact, I have 3 VSOs working in this building, which is a big deal. Most people in the veterans culture understand that if you need something, you're going to see your veteran service officer, and often they get overwhelmed. So to be able to help veteran service officers with wraparound services is critical. So that was the start, helping with basic services, education, legal, benefits, housing, financial. And then through my own transition, I learned that we've got to make behavioral health more accessible. So in 2016, I opened a behavioral health counseling center here at Mount Carmel. And then I opened what we call a gateway program where I have employees doing nothing but referrals so that they're connecting veterans to immediate needs. When people are struggling, they don't need help in 30 days and 60 days. They need help today,
Amen.
this week. So we're committed to make sure we get help quickly. And we have a very strong partnership with the VA. And the VA, in fact, refers people to us in sometimes in a timely manner through the community network of care. We have an amazing partnership for the last 3 years with UC Health, which was the largest healthcare provider in the state, with a program called Next Chapter, designed to prevent veteran suicide, which we're very proud of. To me, that program is critical because it's a low barrier program where veterans get Mount Carmel services, behavioral health, supportive services, employment services, and then they get intensive inpatient or outpatients through UC Health. So those are two critical things that we started and evolved. One is supportive services, behavioral health, and then transition and employment. When I was serving on active duty at Fort Carson, the Coors Foundation put out an RFP to help troops in transition. What we were doing in the military that I mentioned earlier is we'd take people on active duty to fight because we needed them. Some with pre-existing conditions, would put them into combat, and then the result at the end wouldn't be desirable for either the troop or service because many of them became non-deployable. And we weren't very good at doing transitional care way back when. I'll tell you from my experience in the last 12 years, the military's done a heck of a lot better in taking care of service members that might be wounded, ill, or injured during transition.
Yeah.
So the program that the Corps started was called Peer Navigators, and they were in the community helping troops in transition. And they would call me and say, "What are you guys doing? You've got a troop living under the bridge. You've got a troop in the intensive behavioral health center. They're not ready to transition. You got to do better." So that was back in 2010. And I think what we looked at in our fighting force is how are we helping troops in transition? How are we taking care of them? And we did a lot of things to make it better. So the mission is to fight and win, and then you can still have to help people in transition. So 5 years after that, when I started Mount Carmel, that organization came to me and said, thank you for the help you gave us on active duty. We don't want to do this program anymore. So in 2015, we inherited a Corps-funded program, which was peer navigation, which we now have as transition and employment. So our transition and employment program was born from my experience on active duty, working with a nonprofit in the community. I, as the garrison commander of Fort Carson, formed a lot of MOUs with community partners. And now, as a nonprofit operating in this community, I have 2 memorandums of agreement with Fort Carson to make sure the partnership is critical. So when you look at supportive services, behavioral health and wellness, transition and employment, and then I have a Green Connect program, which is all about connecting with community partners. And recently, Mount Carmel, host the Colorado State Veteran Business Outreach Center. Many states in our country have veteran business outreach centers, partnered with the SBA nationally to help military members in transition become entrepreneurs. In Colorado Springs, it's about beer, liquor, coffee, barista, brewery, distillery, many communities like that.
I've been in Colorado Springs. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So many veterans own those businesses and many other successful businesses. So the Veteran Business Outreach Center helps with a program called Boots to Business, which helps service members in transition start a small business, and then a program called Reboot, which helps veterans throughout the state start and keep small businesses. So
Reboot. That's a clever title.
yep. So when you look at the importance, and I think we have a great mix here: supportive services, behavioral health counseling, transition and employment, the Next Chapter program for suicide prevention, the Veteran Business Outreach Center. And when you look at our campus here, we have many partners that do a variety of things. TBI Freedom is a nonprofit that helps veterans with TBI. Volunteers of America helps with housing. So to me, what I've learned over the years is doing the core competencies is critical, but you've got to have willing partners that want to be part of the solution. And for me, when I use the term public-private partnership, it's so important. One of the things that we really learned, especially in 2020, well, you wine drinker?
Little bit. Yeah, yeah.
So my question to you is, does the wine belong on the shelf or in the glass? Right. So I use that analogy because many public funders, whether it's federal, state, county, city, some of the people who control these funds act like it's their money, and they weren't so willing to dish it out, and there was a lot of restrictions that almost make it challenging to get these grants. During COVID, if you remember, there was a lot of federal dollars that came through the
I
system.
do.
And I think what was learned in a public-private partnership was, hey, we need to get these dollars, and I'm going to speak specifically about the veteran community,
Mhm.
into the hands of organizations that can help with rent assistance. Because if you remember all the challenges with people losing their jobs and having to pay rent, we were the recipient of a lot of rent assistance dollars, which got into the hands of the people like the wine. It was in the glass, in the
Right.
hands. We probably in the first 6 months of COVID were able to give out $800,000 of rent assistance, which kept people housed,
Oh,
to
God
prevent
bless you.
homelessness.
Yeah.
During that time, there were a lot of businesses when you come out of the military that you couldn't have the job you wanted because it wasn't available at the time. Certainly the hospitality industry was challenged. Sometimes the defense contractors were sizing down a little bit too, but we helped vector troops in transition into jobs they could get today and then get the dream job once the COVID crisis cleared up. The other thing that was important when a very touchy subject is military food insecurity, what I attribute the challenge to is the economy. So if we were able to do some things for um, for that issue, we started a bi-weekly food drive with an operation called Care and Share. We still do today. So every other week here on our campus, there's a large parking lot. We're able to touch about 250 families to provide some food. And to me, it just offsets that bi-weekly budget so that they can keep going. So that was important. One of the things that I read at the beginning of the COVID crisis was you're going to be judged for the next 10 years on what you do now as an organization, whether it's profit or nonprofit. Are you trying to take advantage of a crisis, or are you really
What a
trying
way
to?
to boil that down.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right, right. This
So
is
for
going to
me,
be under a microscope in 5, 8, 10 years. So,
so so for me, the food piece was important, getting
mhm.
stuff to offset cost, and then to be able to do the rent assistance. And we kept our building open. We went to 50% staffing, and we were able to keep our mantra is a beacon of support. We were able to provide so many different services here during the 20 to 22 time period. One of the things I'm very proud of is people would call me and they would say, Bob, I lost my spouse. There's no way, nowhere to go to have a celebration of life or a service. So we created a capability where we could put people using, social distancing and allow small groups to come together to do that, and we sealed off the rest of the building, and people were very grateful that they were able to do that. Because many spots just said, no, you can't do anything. And we obeyed the rules and regulations and gave families the opportunity to do that using safe procedures.
as if life doesn't go on. I rail on this all the time about the some people that want the wine remain on the shelf. That the number one, and grants do a wonderful blessing, right? But the number one problem with grants and things in my eyes, has always been the restrictions that come along with it, and making it work more like a fetter instead of jet fuel, right? Um, and and you're in the military, right? So you know the problem is as one person said years ago, one person poops their pants, and then the rest of the army has to wear a diaper for until the
Oh
end of
yeah,
time, right? So
yeah.
they've made more jokes on the that Dayglow PT belt, right? I mean that just there's so many there are guys that have said I've had to wear a PT belt in a in a garage in a on a thing as if a car is going to drive through there, and somehow hit me. And unfortunately, so many grants are devised in that way, and they say, if you have staff, they need to be volunteer. And I'm like, that's naive, right? Are we supposed to win the lottery before we can do some good? Are we supposed to marry wealthy or inherit a bunch of money before we can do something, right? Or this is what you can't do. This is what you can't do. Uh, Grants sometimes get in their own way, and they want to keep, like you're saying, too much wine on the shelf. So let me ask you a side question. You had 3 deployments. Um, Everybody always wants to say, what did you miss most when you're on deployment? My question would be, um, uh, come third deployment, what did you have to say to Mrs. McLaughlin? Like, I got to go back, right? And keep the home fires lit, keep everything ready. Um, does the Veterans Service Center, do you have to flex and work on that? Just sit there and say, as you said, it's about the family, right? The family unit has got to be, in charge and healthy and strong. And you don't want a distracted service member, right? You don't want a distracted, guy if he's worrying about, hearth and home, thousands of miles away.
Well, the two things. Families are critical, and every time I deployed 5 times, and
Oh,
since
5 times.
uh, since I actually deployed once before 9/11. It was to the Balkans.
Yeah.
I was with the First Cavalry Division, and we were the first CONUS base division, first division from the U.S. to go over to Bosnia Herzegovina to conduct operations there for a year. So that was interesting because no U.S. based division had deployed overseas probably since the Vietnam War. The whole division basically staff with so that was a amazing learning experience. I laugh because my first deployment in '98, I had to go to an MWDF, Morale, Welfare, and Recreation phone and call the morale hotline to talk to my spouse, which was probably good. And on my last deployment in 12 and 13, I just opened my computer and turned on FaceTime and I could communicate. And too much communication creates challenges for military members and families,
Mhm.
especially when you're deployed. Some people would say, aside from the inherent danger of combat operations, the troop on the ground serving has it easier than the family back home, the spouse, man or woman. In my case, different leadership positions is challenging, stressful, rewarding, all the things that a soldier wants to do to make sure that the unit is strong. But my spouse, for example, had 5 kids at home, and she was taking care of them by herself. And for all spouses where they're service members in a leadership position, they have responsibility with families to make sure that they're okay. It's inherent in the
Right.
position when you care about other people. So to me, families are critical on active duty. And then when you look at the transition of a military member, um, with challenges from service, wounded, invisible or visible, uh, it's the spouse that's going to keep that veteran strong. I've learned that through my
Amen.
Yeah, I learned that through my service here. And that's why we call it military veterans and families. For example, a day in the life here, right? Especially when I first started. Remember, we've got supportive services, behavioral health, transition and employment. And the veteran would come in and say, I want a job. I normally would sit down with a couple and talk to the spouse and the veteran about what their goals were. And the veteran would say, I need a job. And the spouse, man or woman, would say, do you guys do behavioral health counseling here? And I'd say, yes, we do. And they would like wink at me and say, we need some of that too. So the beauty of doing the wraparound services here with families is tremendously important because, success or failure is going to come as a family, whether you're going to be strong and be able to be employed. One of the in bad situations when veterans are suffering, they isolate. There's normally a drug of choice, whether it's over medicating or using excessive alcohol, and the spouse is the one that has to deal with that to try to get them to be okay. So one specific story that I have when it comes to helping others deals with our Next Chapter program. Last summer, this is the beauty of having low barrier programs. I got a call from a friend of mine that's an adjunct professor at one of the local colleges, and he said, I have a veteran that needs help. First good news story is he called me because he knew we could provide help. The other good news story is he actually asked the veteran, and this is where people are afraid, ask the person, are you okay? And he did. He asked the young man after class, are you okay? And he said, no, I'm not. And he called me immediately on a Thursday night, and I told him to give me the veteran's phone number. He said, don't you want to know what the situation is? I said, okay, tell me. So this vet had separated years ago. He was isolated, going through a divorce, had a child about 6 years old, and was depressed. And I scheduled a meeting with him on Friday. I went up, met him at a coffee shop, and you could tell he was struggling. And I said, like we do in the service business, tell me your dream. What would you like? He said, and he never said I needed counseling. He said, I don't want to be isolated. He had a disability such that he couldn't work full time. I want a part-time job. Um, and and I want to be connected in the community, and I want my VA rating, my disability rating to go up. So there's four things there that we serve. Remember, he didn't ask for counseling. So I texted all my leaders, employment, VA benefits, community connections, Next Chapter to get him enrolled in counseling, even though I know he wasn't asking.
Mm-hmm.
And they all answered. And I showed him, I said, look, we've got answers for all of this. And he obviously was emotional, and I asked him, are you going to be okay this weekend? He said, I'm going to be fine. He came into our center, and within an hour of having little hope, he was able to get a job coach, a connection with the veteran service officer. We knew he needed counseling, so we got him counseling, and I connected him to some veteran support groups within an hour. So the whole
Wow, that's
yeah,
fast deployment.
it's just so to be able to provide hope with his hopelessness through these services in a timely manner is so important. That's just one situation of many where I get directly involved as the executive director into helping someone.
So I love to see a story like that. Unfortunately, a lot of the stories are the ones that break your heart, right? But my question then is, so at the end of the day, there's always a metric, right? There's a number, um, and I would say,
Looking to grow your business beyond 5 figures, 6 figures, 7 figures plus, what I want you to do is go download this book. The title is called Be Good, Be Brief, Be Gone. It will help you grow your business past 5, 6, and 7 figure. Go download the book today, growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash, and download the book for absolutely free.
You're obviously doing something that works right? That's amazingly fast deployment. To be able to, you get this, you engage, you find multiple services for this individual. It's wonderful that he, was strong enough to sit there and say, no, right? That's a huge step. It allows you to help him with the help in the first place. So the team is succeeding. Mount Carmel is doing the work. I've got a two-part question is, what do you attribute the success to? And I think it was speedy, part of it's got to be speed of movement. You're not sitting on your hands. But the second is at the end of the day, how do you know when Mount Carmel and the Veterans Service Center, how do you know, and what metric do you use to say we're winning, we're doing the job, and this is where we are. Here's our benchmark. We're seeing points on the board, we're seeing the win, but how do we know this is what makes us where we can say we're on the positive side of it, and we're actually doing the needful work that we've got to do? Because at the end of the day, I work with all kinds of charities. I talk about 50 charities a month in terms of how we service. And it's one thing, I believe society needs art. So it's one thing for me to talk to a symphony that is, trying to grow, raise money, make sure they keep, the art in there. It's one thing to sit there and say, to work with a no-kill dog shelter, right? As I was saying to you earlier, I have a dog. I love dogs. I think God put dogs on the earth for a very specific reason. It's something to raise money, to get something for an aquarium, to get something for somebody who is in a really particularly damaged cycle, and that person is a veteran who's already taken up the sword to, as my grandfather who served in World War II would say, you sleep different. He didn't have the term 1%. He said, you sleep differently than the rest of the planet. Right? You do not know what the majority of the planet and what their sleep is like in comparison. And that is due to the United States military, right? We are the shield, of the land that allows us to sleep completely differently. I think beyond an average person going through the things that they suffer, problems in their life that they've got going through, I think it makes it more needful for that to be with a veteran, the very person that allows you to sleep in that manner. But I was taught that from a particularly young age. But also when that particular work, that particular work with the sword can be the damaging process in of itself, right? Whether the wound is visible or, as you said, or invisible. You have the idea that is obviously an important requirement, whether or not everybody sees it or not. But what does Bob say? And how does the team look at it and say, one, what do we attribute our success to? And two is, how do we know that we're winning in terms of the very work that we're doing?
Let me start with a quote from General George Washington. So in the 18th century, George Washington, and that was a long time ago, he said these words: the likelihood of young men to serve in any war or conflict, just or unjust, will directly depend on how he perceives veterans of previous wars are being treated. Washington said that in the 18th century.
I have never heard that quote.
Look at look, you can Google it, Washington on
No,
service.
I love it. I'm not. No, I'm not doubting your the veracity of this statement. I'm saying,
Yep.
I've read a lot about George. I've never heard that quote. I'm adopting it immediately, and I see the truth of it. Right.
Very,
Um,
very insightful. So for us as a nonprofit doing this work, and people have said there was a memo put out by DOD in 2013 that said we can't help veterans by ourselves. We need the community to help. 2013. So for me, this work of making sure that veterans are cared for, you know, ties directly back to service and how can we help, make sure that our culture is such that people will continue to serve. So how do we know we're successful? There's so many tangibles and non-tangibles. Number one, it's people through the door that know about us
sure.
or people connecting to us, which is important because every life you connect, you can make a change to whether you know it or not. So for me, we get about 20,000 annually through the door in this very densely populated community. We
Oh
have
my God,
national,
20,000?
yep, we have national connections. And then just like you said, well, every grant comes with stipulations that we have to answer,
Sure.
whether it's employment, whether it's supportive services. In our deployment department, we have put over 4,500 into meaningful employment. The next chat, what are we looking for in our society? Suicide prevention, homeless prevention, building strong community with strong families, making sure families are staying together. So the next chapter program, which is really suicide prevention, which is everything that we do, we were chartered to touch about 650 lives in 3 years through a grant, and we've touched about 1,150 already. And the county coroner of El Paso County attributed to the reduction in veteran suicide in this region directly to that program. That's unsolicited from I mean, that's a metric where the coroners actually attributed it to what we're doing to help our veterans, which is very important.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Every day we are caring for a person, whether it's through the benefits of service or through immediate needs. We connect. Each year, every region does a mark in time for homelessness. So the numbers fluctuate it's probably 1,200 in this region, maybe 200 to 300 veterans that are registered. So we actually implemented on behalf of the county. We actually took over a program 2 years ago called the Veteran Homeless Stand Down, where we work with community partners to help veterans in a homeless situation become housed or gain resources so they don't freeze to death in the winter. This year we touched about 110. Now, and I can't tell you because the numbers differentiate on who's registered as a homeless person, but that's a pretty significant number. Through a program called the Homeless Initiative, we took 9 from homelessness in a month and put them into self-sufficiency, which is pretty significant, and it saves a lot of money once someone is self-sufficient. So there's so many different metrics that we use through each department where I know that we're achieving the success. Mr. Chimino used to say to me, he's a very strong businessman. He used to say, Colonel, never worry about money. And I'm in the back of my mind thinking this is a nonprofit, I need money. And he said, do good work and people will support you. And every time until his death last year, when I would go to brief him annually on the budget, we would show him a bar chart that showed a balanced budget and how many people we served. And since 2017, it would go up probably $300,000 to $400,000 a year. And he would get his pencil out and connect the mountain. And he said, look, you're getting more money, your balanced budget, and you're helping more people. I told you.
Right.
So when you look at that metric, we're we're connecting, helping more people and getting more support. And it's never a done deal, because unless you have an endowment or something that's paying the bills, you've got to fight every year to make sure you break even. And that's another metric. We've been in the black every year for the last 8 years in helping veterans. You need fuel. There's three things that are priority here. Number one is making sure that nobody falls through the cracks. So for me, if we're able to make an impact on veteran suicide rate, if we're able to impact veterans homelessness, if we're able to save a life and keep a family together, that's the most important thing, that people know that if they need something, they can come to us and it's low barrier. Number two is partners. We have about 400 registered partners that do something with us: behavioral health, employment, supportive services, Veteran Business Outreach Center. So helping the individual, great partnerships, and then fuel for the engine, right? Time, talent, and treasure. And when people talk about fuel for the engine, it's time, talent, and treasure. It's fiscal support. It's partnering with someone who has a skill that wants to be part of the team. And then it's, this everything we do, whether it's programs or services or events, we need volunteers to do that too. So the fact that we keep those going strong is also a metric that shows that we're making an impact.
So let me ask you then another two-parter. And we've touched on this a little bit. One, I would say, so then again, since opening your doors, how have you, how have you had to change, right? Because of what you're doing. And which always brings me to the big question, and that is, well, besides money, what's the big stumbling block? What's the big blocking factor for Mount Carmel that is the big thing that gets in the way?
Probably when you look at, I'm always trying to look at what the issues are. And really, if you look across the country, and especially in military popular areas and rural communities, it's access to care. It's access to care if you're in a rural community or you're a senior and isolated. So to me, as we evolve, it's how do we make sure that if you're a veteran and you serve, you can get the care that you need. You don't have to travel 50 miles to the VA to get care. If you don't know how to use a computer, you can get computer skills to make sure that you can do remote care if that's available. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's something that we've looked at over the last 5 years. How do we impact access to care? Because if you need something, whether it's remote access, whether it's getting a ride somewhere, all of those things are impact people's behavioral health. Because if you need something, you need it today, not tomorrow, and you need to connect with someone. So to me, access to care and connections. We started a program about 6 years ago called Veteran Connections, and that's all about connecting the veteran to care that they need today. I've expanded my operations in the last 2 years. South Pueblo is about 50 minutes away, which is a very famous community. They have 4 Medal of Honor recipients from that town, home of heroes.
Yeah.
So we have a satellite office there. And then what I've tried to do, especially in Southeast Colorado, is put what I call resource officers with veteran service officers. So I have 3 employees in different counties that are partnering with veteran service officers to provide resources. What wrong looks like in a rural area is when the VSO has to do everything. Our veteran service officers are dedicated people who want to help veterans. They get paid to do benefits, to be an advocate for veterans benefits through the VA for healthcare, but they often find themselves doing so much more. So what we try to do is put a resource officer with a veteran service officer so they can partner as a team and do better. My dream is, and of course you said, with the right resources, we can do anything. I would love to be able to do that to all the willing counties in the state that would like, and it's proven successful, where the resource officer is helping with programs, helping with food drives, helping connect to services. So to me, that's part of what I've learned. In order to get access to care. You got to have people out there that are going to vector the different resources, links to behavioral health, links to ride sharing, um, links to we partner with Comcast on a program that allows rural veterans to get access to a computer, access to know how to use it. So that's also important. That's all part of access to care, and to me, that's critical when you say how have you evolved? Access to care is one of the
Amen.
most
Yeah, yeah.
important things. And then leveraging all the technologies that we have to make sure that people know that you have an organization like ours, and then building partnerships where there's really no wrong door, and then improving the public-private partnerships either with the military installations or the VA. You know, the DD-214 is the mark of service. Pre-DD-214 with the Department of Defense to make sure that when people are getting into a transition situation, and the worst situation is not transition by choice. If you're transitioning on your own timeline, it's stressful, but less stressful. If you're not on your own timeline, whether it's a physical issue and you get medically discharged, or a behavioral issue or an addiction issue where you're getting discharged not on your timeline, those are the most at risk population. So what I try to do is make sure that we get into those programs where people are getting discharged on a different timeline, because they're most at risk. Because, you know, in a normal situation, if someone came in and they dreamed about staying for 20 years, commissioned or non-commissioned, and all of a sudden at the end of 5 years they've got to leave, we've got to make sure that they are strong. So one of the things I've done to evolve is get into the programs early, bring those individuals to Mount Carmel so they know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And then the other population, which is usually at risk, is our justice involved veterans. You know, unfortunately, in many cases, due to something that they experienced in combat, they may have got excessive DUIs. They may have gotten in a fight that ended up hurting somebody, and all of a sudden they went from highly performing service member to incarcerated. And then what I'm trying to do with a bunch of different groups is make sure when someone does their time that, you know, the recidivism rate in our country is 50%. 50% of those that are in prison go back. And that's a huge taxpayer burden and doesn't do anything good for the person either.
And you mean for veterans?
Everybody. That's the number.
That national recidivism rate is 83%.
Yep. Oh, well, I don't have that number, so
Jail ministry.
right. So let's say 50% for veterans, because that's the number I always hear. So we don't want that. So we try.
No, still terrible, right?
Yep. So we try to make sure that there's another option. I work with the parole office. I make sure that, you know, you take a right instead of a left, get a job, get on your feet. So when you say how do you evolve, it's helping those most at risk get access to care so they can be productive in society.
I'll read that as keeping your finger on the pulse, right? You're reading what's needed, and then you flex, you evolve to meet the need. So you have an unprecedented chart here. You have said two things which I'm going to carry with me for a long time. He gave me a George Washington quote, and again, I apologize. I'm not doubting that he said it. I was amazed because I think that's next to an army marches on its stomach, right? Washington saying the likelihood of men doing that is how are they seeing veterans before them be treated? I mean, that is that's information reduction sauce that goes right down to the core, of the matter. And you said something in passing. I don't know if it's your line. I'm absolutely stealing it. And that is, you said, and I think it shows something to the speed of which, of what you're doing. You said, there's no wrong door, right? And the problem in our modern age and the glut of information the surfeit of chances and choices on a website or how to contact work with them, and you're overcome sometimes with data, and you're afraid you're going to go down the wrong path and to start something and get into an endless cycle of transfers, and being able to say we're, in our team, we want to be able to build it so that there are no wrong doors. It's
Well,
okay. We're here. We're talking to you now. Are you okay? And let's do something, right? And we can expand. We can have a wider impact. We can unpack that and see the different areas we got to hit. But you've got two hits on me: the George Washington quote and "No wrong doors." I'm
yeah,
keeping that.
I have the Washington quote posted out front, and it's so important because it's our national, it's our culture.
It's incredible. It's
And
incredible. I love it.
I believe regardless of what people say, Americans will always serve. There's always somebody out there that'll rise to the occasion and do the right thing, and I'm confident of that. Here's a quick story for you when you talk about no wrong door. 2020, March of 2020,
Mhm.
not a very good time.
Not. I remember March
So
of 2020.
so we do many different outreach things, and there's a place called the Rescue Mission to help homeless. And in April of 2020, my team did office hours at the Rescue Mission.
Mhm.
And when the veteran, and it's a woman, tells her story, she tells it like this. There I was, middle-aged woman in the rescue mission, and this particular veteran, I always say you're two life crises away from homelessness. In her case, it was a divorce and a loss of job. And
Mm.
she had two adult children, late teens, and there she is. Rescue mission, homeless, veteran, terrible, 2020. So we went there, we did office hours. And so here's chronologically how we were able to help this veteran through the no wrong door. The very next day after my team met with her, and she would say, I'm a veteran. I don't, what's Mount Carmel? I'm going to go see that person.
Mhm.
So she did. The very next day, I lease say an apartment right adjacent to my building for transitional housing. We got her into the apartment for transitional housing. She was obviously dealing with some behavioral health challenges. So she's now housed, homeless, next day housed, next day with a counselor, next day with a job coach. So housed, counselor, job coach. The next month she has a job. She's still housed in our temporary apartment, which she doesn't have to pay for.
Mhm.
And in the very next month, she gets an apartment. So April of 2020, homeless. May, June, end of June 2020, she has an apartment and a job, and she's got counseling. She's getting on her feet. I did a television interview, which she came to give a testimonial. I've never met her um, personally. My team was helping her. Every time I went to see her, she was out. And I met her at the interview, and she gave a great testimonial. And after the interview, August of 2020, she was outside sitting on the bench. And I said, "What are you doing?" She says, "I'm waiting for an Uber." I said, "I'll give you a ride home." So I gave her a ride to her apartment, dropped her off, and then we have a program with called Keys to Progress, where it's probably nationally, where 3 veterans a year get a car. And I told my team, put her in for Keys to Progress through Progressive. And October 1st of 2020, she was awarded a like new vehicle right in front of Mount Carmel. So she went from March of 2020 homeless to October of 2020 job, apartment, vehicle, and then her life since then hasn't been perfect, and we've continued to help her.
Sure.
But to have no wrong door and to be able to connect with someone to get them self-sufficient during that year was unbelievable. So we stay connected to her because of that amazing story that she has of resiliency and getting on her feet during a very challenging time.
When I say, how do you know, what's a metric? How do you know if you're winning? If that isn't it right there, then there's no more. there's no way to measure it. And although um, it's a it's a wildly small chance comparative that somebody on top of it would actually, also win the car. The fact that exists and it's there, and at least three people a year, have that chance. But again, it's the speed, right? March of 2020 was the meteor coming down and and hitting the planet month. On March 10th, I went to a concert um, of 2020, and then by March 17th, March 19th, everything was going into lockdown. Right? That was, I mean, that was the pivotal month. It was a rough month. Um, but for Mount Carmel to be able to move and act so quickly and get somebody, hope I'm never in this situation where I am in need of your services, Bob. Uh, but I'm glad you're out there like the catcher in the rye, helping those that have served and getting back up on their feet. Her life may not be perfect. I have a wonderful life. My life's not perfect, right? But I think she would say she's light years beyond, where she had been. Um, Anything we've left out? Because I think that is that's a I think that's our closer. I think I mean that's a wonderful story for that woman. Um, and again, we've heard stories of people waiting, unfortunately, not to beat up on them, but I talked to a lot of veterans, and so many of them have VA horror stories. I think you say it in a very mature way where, that's just not always the scope and job, of what they're doing. But I think your huge blessing is you have your pieces in place and you're able to move on them so quickly that it changes people. I am absolutely unapologetically stealing no wrong doors, right? I mean, that's mine now. I'm going to, I may give footnotes and I say I got that from Bob McLaughlin, back in the very end of 2024, but that is too rich an idea to lose. Um, thank you for what you do. Anything we've missed?
No, I've enjoyed talking. It's a great opportunity to let people know about what we're doing here and the importance of what Washington said, and that there's organizations out here, public and private, that want to help our military veteran and families.
It's a great story to tell, right? And you've got it. I also did not know you were so military dense up in that area. I have to go to um, uh, Denver and Boulder and around Colorado Springs about 3 to 4 times a year now, and it's beautiful, but it's killing to me. Uh, I can smell salt water, here at all times. And by my second day there at these shows and things like that, I can barely speak, um, because in Denver there's no air and there's no water in the air that they don't have. In Savannah, Georgia, we breathe our water and we chew our air. Right? I mean, it's rough. My buddy who's up in Boulder, they're coming to visit us. Um, he himself has had multiple TBI, right, from his trainings. And he was a sniper and everything he had to do. But he's like, Eric, his wife Erica, he says, we're not coming in August. I'm like, well, yeah, because Savannah, Georgia, we've got Hunter Army Air Force, right? We've got Fort Stewart, we've got air place else. But I'm like, we say God made Georgia to train the faithful right around July and August. If you you'll find all the perspiration you could have ever found. But again, thank you for what you're doing. I love what you do. Um, you and your team need to be your pride points are around that incredible speed of which you're able to act and move on that, because that is that one service woman, you she may be two traumatic events from being homeless, but she was one connection away from getting her life back on track and radically helping her. And um, she had to be glad Mount Carmel Veterans Service Center, was there to help her. So in the meantime, let me say this, and this is for all the kids in the back. If you would like to help Mount Carmel, well, let me ask you this real quick, and I'll finish up on that. Bob, what are ways that people can help you and your team help the veterans that you serve?
So to connect to us, right, whether it's time, talent, or treasure, if someone's in the area and um, wants to volunteer or has a superpower that they want to help veterans,
Mm.
uh, give us a call, go on the webpage, come over to us. If you're not around here and want to
Links
support,
will be below.
yep, yep. And if you're not around here and want to support us, it'll go to a good cause because we have a lot of military in this community that either will stay in Colorado or move somewhere else. And for us to be able to help them with the 5 installations during the pivotal transition time doesn't just impact Colorado, it impacts all over the country. So we're honored to do the work, and the more support we can get from people out there all around the country is we're grateful for that.
And there are no wrong doors. You get to Mount Carmel, and as a veteran, they're gonna help you find the place you need to be. Now, if you have, as well as wrap up on this, as I like to say, if you have a business, right, almost like an endowment, if you have a business and you would like to support this very worthy organization, right, without ever writing them a check, you can redirect part of your merchant fees and give to Mount Carmel and help them help veterans long term. One of my great, the points I've got on the board is 13 years ago, this past November, was our very first client that ever signed up. Bob happened to be a car dealership themselves. 13 years later, they are still giving to their charity because when used business come on, right? If you have a business, you're not writing a check to your charity. You're legally, with the IRS's blessing, redirecting a part of the fee that you pay anyway. And as we say, you can put a bank president in a new Lexus at the end of the year, or you can give to save something like a symphony, a school, somebody who hasn't eaten, a dog in a homeless shelter, or even better, one of our veterans that are allowing us to sleep like the rest of the world has never even heard of. If you'd like to do that, links will be below. Now we're going to have a number of links, including the link where you can go directly to the Mount Carmel Veterans Service Center. If you are not okay and you would like to talk to them, there's no wrong door. I'm going to use that all the time now. All you need to do is connect with Bob and his team, and they will find you where you need to be. In the meantime, Bob, thank you for coming on and spending a little extra time with us today. And let me ask you one off the wall question, because I like to ask one and get somebody from left field. You've seen the movie Star Wars.
I have.
Everybody's seen Star Wars, right? It's kind of inescapable. All right, so you're in your spaceship. You're about to make the run on the Death Star to go help blow that up. What song does Bob put in to his CD player, cassette player, digital player, 8-track tape player, whatever it may be? What song does Bob put in? Not when he's actually fighting the Death Star, but he's about to make the run, that gets Bob pumped up, that makes the hairs on the back of his neck raise up because he's got to get his brain in the game.
The Romantics, What I Like About You.
All right, all right. I would, if I were to have been a betting man, I would have lost money because I would have never put Bob and the Romantics together. Um, what I Like About You and One in a Million, two great songs from 80s right there back in the day. And you've warmed the cockles of my heart that you would pull something like that out of left field. Romantics, What I Like About You. Okay, I wouldn't have picked that. Bob, you don't look like a romantics man, but that makes me happy. I'm happy you picked that. That's why I asked that weird question. thank you so much for joining with me today. I'm going to say something. We don't get to do this all the time. We normally come back every couple of years. I think we need to come back in a little under a year and talk about Carmel again and see where you are. Because at the end of the day, our veterans aren't going anywhere, right? And they continually need your services. And I'd like to formally invite you back. I'll have the team follow up with you, but you do too good a work for us not to follow back up with you.
I'd be honored. You just tell me.
You got it. All right. I appreciate it.
Hey, we all want to scale our business. Hey, I have the answer for you today to help you do that. If you're looking to scale from 5, 6, even 7 figures and beyond, book called Be Good, Be Brief, Be Gone. I'm going to give it to you for free. All you have to do is type in growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash, and you can download the book for absolutely free. I hope the book helps you this year. Take your business to the next level. Again, go grab the book, growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash. I wish you the best and grow, scale, and win.
That wraps up today's episode of The Wizard of Calls. We hope you've enjoyed the insights and ideas shared in today's conversation. Now, if you found value in this episode, don't forget to subscribe and tell us how we're doing. Your feedback helps us bring you more content that matters. And of course, stay connected with us for updates, tips, and more. Until next time, keep giving, take care, and keep making an impact.
There it is. Magnum. Holy moly.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for!
Dear God. It's beautiful.